Better late than never, as they say, and I do apologize for being a few days late with this one. This is the POCO F3, my video on it, so you're probably well aware of the value offering that this value flagship has, and it certainly is that because the early bird model is going to be selling for €299 only, and considering the spec on offer, that is so good. And it's going to be really the phone, I believe, to beat now for 2021. So we have a Snapdragon 870, which is basically an overclocked 865 with the 5G support. It's still there. UFS 3.1 storage. Now, my model has 256 gigabytes. The base model has 128, and the 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM with this too. So it's a very, very fast phone. And then the screen is important. We need a good screen in a fast phone, and it's got it. 120 hertz. It's a AMOLED panel, really nice, 6.67 inches, and all up in a decent, very good package here. Dual SIM support, sadly no micro SD or 3.5 millimeter, and we have a 48 megapixel main camera with this, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel macro. The camera that's in the cutout of the AMOLED screen, this one is 20 megapixels. And what do we get in the box? So we have a TPU clear case. Our charger is 33 watts maximum. Now this will fully charge the POCO F3. It's 4,520 milliamp hour battery in just under 1 hour. Our USB cable, and they did include a Type-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter. That is really good. And I have some stickers, POCO stickers, warranty card, and a user guide. There's also a SIM tray tool. Build quality of this phone is very good for the price tag. So it has that introductory early bird price of only €299, which is phenomenal value. And you're getting a nice build to this. So the weight of it is 197 grams. According to my scales, it's about 8 millimeters thick. If you include this camera, which sticks out a little bit, as you can see, that brings it up to about 11 millimeters. Now, there's a little bit of confusion with the frame on this one. Inner frame is alloy. You can see when you take out the SIM tray at the bottom and you look in, you can see that there's an inner alloy and then it has a plastic around the outside. So it's a plastic frame. That's why I'm calling it a plastic frame. But this is Gorilla Glass 5 on the back, Gorilla Glass on the front of our 6.67 inch screen. And right up here, we do have a 20 megapixel camera. We've seen this in a lot of their phones. Now, f2.5 aperture, 1080p video maximum with this, up to 60 frames per second. And the bezels around the outside, they're not too bad. The chin isn't too bad, although that wallpaper's hiding it a little bit. So it's a little bit there, but overall good. In-hand feels great. Now, the side fingerprint reader, very easy access to this. When just holding it, I can simply tap that, and you see, look at how quick that is. That is really good. So the Snapdragon 870 is helping here. It's basically an overclocked Snapdragon 865 with the Adreno graphics. It's the 650, yes. And that's really, really quick there. So this button on the side, the volume up and down, that is made out of metal there, okay? And this frame around the outside, I wanted to say, that is plastic, this little bit that goes around the outside before we have the Gorilla Glass 5. So down there, yes, we have that loudspeaker and then the microphone and our Type-C port. So no video out of this one. A lot of people do ask me. So no Xiaomi phones at the time of this video support USB 3.1 with video out, sadly. The SIM tray, this takes 2 nano SIMs, as you can see, so one on either side. And no micro SD card support, no 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. At the top here, it is an IR transmitter, our microphone, and then the secondary loudspeaker. I'll give you a sample of them later on in this video. Looking now at our screen, so this one is 6.67 inches. It is an AMOLED screen with 120 hertz, and it has a touch rate of 360 hertz, so very responsive to touch. Now, because it is an AMOLED, it's got uniform colors. It doesn't have any funny dimmer pixels around the edges. It doesn't have any of the problems around the cutout. And you will probably see right there that there is no dimmer pixels. And if I go over to the white image right here, even though it stayed in green colors, that yes, there is a ring around this with the front-facing camera that I don't particularly like it to be standing out like this. However, there's no dimmer pixels around it. So maximum brightness they claim is 1300 nits. Now with my measurements, I'm getting around close to 900 nits, very similar to the K40 Pro. After all, it's got the same screen and, well, it's basically the same phone, isn't it? It's a great touch response. How does it fare in direct sunlight? So, very good most of the time. However, I shot a lot of 4K video, and what I did notice happen is that the screen got very, very dim because it started to get very hot shooting 4K video, taking photos. With the screen at maximum brightness, it eventually was getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer because it was, well, a kind of display throttling was taking place there. So that's one thing I wanted to point out with this. The other thing with the display is that it does not have DC dimming, so you may see this flicker that's running up and down. That's some pulse width modulation flicker, it's called. Now, if you're watching this on your phone with a cracked screen at just 360p, you probably won't see this. And I can't see it here because it's only on camera, but people sensitive to this, AMOLEDs, they do this at lower brightnesses, will definitely notice. Now, to make it even more obvious, what I'll do is lower the brightness down. You can see it shimmering away now. So some people see that and not just on camera. So if DC dimming was there, which I hope they can add, that won't be happening. So we do have dark mode. We've got our color schemes, scaling. The refresh rate can be changed, of course, to 60 Hertz. And all those typical settings, which is great. I'll show you the color scheme there. So auto mode, I'm keeping it on this for the purposes of this review. I personally prefer original color, and that sets the white balance to me, which is more correct. Onto the ROM performance now. So this one is very, very good. 120 Hertz for mostly everything, okay? So I have noticed that YouTube comments and some things like YouTube will be running just in 60. So everything you do is very, very quick, thanks to, of course, the Snapdragon 870. This is a proper flagship chip, even though really it's a last gen one that they've just overclocked a bit. It is excellent, and you'll see later on with some of the performance metrics that I'll be giving you in this video. So no problems with notifications showing up with this one. I've had a few funny little problems with the K40 Pro. That review is coming up of that one, which I have floating around here in the background. You can see it's basically the same exact phone, just with a Snapdragon 888. And it is a little quicker, but saying that, I've noticed that it's really exactly the same in the UI for everything, that both of these phones, identical speed with everything I'm doing, even though it's Snapdragon 888. It's at that point now that everything's running so fast and smooth, you can't see that difference unless you look at benchmarks. Even gaming, I can barely notice the difference with this. It's just so quick, everything that I'm doing. So there aren't really any things to point out. That, of course, it does have Play Store on there. It's got everything. And I'll get onto a few other bits and pieces like the bloatware and all sorts that we normally get with these, sadly. So I am on the latest firmware, of course. This is out of the box update that just came through. And the bloatware. So there is quite a few, these apps that you will get, depending on your region. So it's configured and customized to your region. So to put on apps that are more specific to where you're living. And this is the free available space that I have. So I've got the 8GB model with 256 gigabytes of storage, and I get 231 gigabytes free on first boot. So these are all the bloatware apps, and I've mentioned this in the review I did of the POCO X3 and the X3 NFC and the X3 Pro, that we have about 22 bloatware applications that I counted, and that is a whopping 2.1 gigabytes, but you simply go into settings, you go into apps, uninstall, and just remove all of that. It takes like 2 minutes, so it's not a massive thing. Still, I would love to see them cut down on this bloatware, and also cut down on this, the application system apps that will come up with adverts in them. Remember, this is the out-of-the-box experience. I believe there's a way to disable it, but I'm just showing you how it is out of the box. So very quick, when you look at Anutu. Now, my Anutu is version 9 now that I'm using, the latest one, and I'm getting this error. Also, the same error with the K40 Pro that I cannot validate the score, verify it online. But it's really quick, okay? Up towards 700,000 now, the new scoring. This one gets about 800,000. So yeah, it is in synthetic benchmarks. A lot quicker than Snapdragon 888. The internal storage, UFS 3.1. So if you've got the 128 gigabyte version, it will not be quite as fast, the writes, but your reads will be. The reads may even be faster than this. So very, very good speeds. Super fast, especially for the price point. Wow, really good. Okay, GPS, it works well. It sees a lot of satellites, and you get an accuracy of 3 meters. So I did check and see if we do have level 5 carrier frequencies showing up in there, and we do. So that means it is dual frequency GPS too, dual carrier frequency, which is great. Camera 2 API support, level 3. I expected this because also the K40 Pro has the same thing. Just like a wide Vine level 1 cert. So Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, all of that in HD and full HD. Now the wireless speeds, Wi-Fi 6 network that I have here, very, very good. Not quite as fast as the Snapdragon 888 that is in the K40 Pro. That gets over 1,000 megabits per second, but still I achieved 919 throughput on my Wi-Fi 6 router. That's impressive. Very, very good speeds. Now I have 5G as well. 5G is working great, good signal strength. Onto the battery life now. So I actually got an impressive result here for a 120 Hz display calibrated to 200 nits of brightness. PC Mark reported almost 14 hours. This is more than the K40 Pro, which I'm currently working on the review of that one right now. So this translates this 14 hours into around about 7 hours of normal kind of use. 7, maybe 8 hours if you use a low brightness, that is. So good battery life for 120 Hertz. Now the charge time, as mentioned, it's just a fraction under an hour. So it is about 58, 59 minutes to fully charge this phone, which is also quite quick for a 4,520 milliamp hour battery. So now I'm going to check out the audio performance on this. I have had enough time to test it out, of course, and I've already placed a couple of calls on this too. And the call quality is fine. Again, it's just like the K40 and the K40 Pro. So what about the 3.5mm headphone support? Well, you can use the Type-C adapter, which is what I've done, and it sounds good. It's very clean, nice output from that, and not a problem there. Xiaomi have been so good with their audio quality for me for many years now. In fact, better than some of those big names out there. So what I will do is just play a track here, and I'll let this go and give you a sample of the speakers at 100% volume, which are loud and they have a hint of bass, and overall they're very good, great for gaming. Over to our gaming performance now. So this phone, as expected, with the chipset, with the fast storage, with the fast RAM, runs all those games out there really well. So PUBG will run at 60 frames per second. I've gone with the highest frame rate possible that I can play with, which I think most players will do that. Now you can go for, instead of just the HD setting, you can go for the one above that, download the texture pack, but it limits us to only 30 frames per second then, which is kind of silly. So the game was great. I managed to get 3 kills, and there was no point me playing this a lot because I know the performance was just a constant 60 frames per second the whole time there. Looking at our game turbo, you can see the FPS counter. Now, a demanding game like Genshin Impact, running at medium settings at 60 frames per second is what I had set. It is very smooth. Now, once you end up battling, say, a few monsters and you cast a few spells, you get an occasional lag, but most of the time it was at steady, constant 60 frames per second again. Now, what I will do is game continually now for 1 hour Genshin Impact at these medium settings at 60 frames per second, and I will see just how hot the Snapdragon 870 and this phone is going to get. Okay, so it's been an hour now, and I'm seeing about 49 almost degrees on the rear, and it could actually be a little warmer. Just going to move that around. Okay, so it seems on the back about 49 there is the hottest point where the chipset is. So I'll flip it over, we'll have a look at the screen. Now the screen feels a little warmer. When I was gaming, the frame is quite warm too. So that is getting up to, you can see, 47, maybe about 48, 49. What about on these edges here near the frame? That is 48, so 49, 50 degrees almost. So you could say 50 degrees now after 1 hour of heavy gaming with a game like Genshin Impact here. So yes, it gets warm. And if you have a case on it and you're in a hot climate, my ambient temperatures are about 24 degrees, then expect a few degrees more, of course. Moving over to our cameras now. So this one has a 20 megapixel front-facing camera that can shoot 1080p only for video. It does have electronic image stabilization and a very good audio bit rate of 320 kilobits per second. And this audio is a big improvement of the typical 96 that we get on the lower end phones from POCO. They will use the 96 and it sounds a little bit scratchy, so these mics are very good. Now the electronic image stabilization I do like, and you can see as I extend my arm out, you can fit, well, a reasonable amount in the shot, but the crop is quite close here. Now rolling shutter, if I move around, you maybe see a little bit of that, but overall it is good quality for 1080p. You may see some occasional little fluctuations with the exposure, which I'm going to test right now. So when it's in this and you're moving around with your head, you may see it flash a little bit, and this is something that, well, even iPhones do that. Let's have a look at the rear cameras now. Video with the main camera, so 48 megapixels, can shoot 4K 30 maximum, 320 kilobit per second audio bitrate, good audio quality, good microphones, and the electronic image stabilization, that is also quite good. Now what I have noticed, if I am to criticize some things about the video here, is that when I pan around in situations like now with the sunset, you do get some panning judder come through, but it's not as bad as what I've seen on the K40 Pro. That seems to have an issue with that, at least with my unit, but this one's a lot better. Now what I will do is just a light jog ahead, demonstrate that electronic image stabilization. I do apologize for any wind noise coming through on these mics. It is extremely windy here and has been for the last few days. This is our ultra wide footage. So with this one, we just have 1080p 30. That's all that this sensor and the lens will allow us to do, or that Xiaomi will permit us. So we can't swap over to the main sensor once you start recording. So you need to make up your mind there with that. This quality is alright. It does have image stabilization, which of course is electronic only, and I'll just jog ahead to demonstrate how smooth that is. And I do find the quality of this ultra wide not as good as the main camera, of course. There is some panning judder that I'm noticing when I pan around a bit with the video. 4K video, 30 frames per second, low light, and yeah, not looking too good. A lot of grain. You can notice some of the jarring coming through as I walk with the electronic image stabilization. So the low light performance is not the strength of the POCO F3, I feel. And if you were going to be shooting vlogs in low light, this is what it looks like, grainy and yeah, not too good. Now there's not a lot of light around. As I step into a little light here, things start to look a little better as expected. It's really struggling, that sensor, with these conditions and the electronic image stabilization. Alright, so all up, hands down, this is the new leader for the gaming budget, flagship, killer, beast, whatever you want to call it, with all those clickbait YouTube titles that I'm probably going to be using one of them anyway. But it's true, don't take my word for it, that this phone, yes, has just so much going for it, for the pricing, the power that's on offer, the spec that is on offer is just, well, it hasn't been seen. Well, it has been seen, hasn't it? The POCO F1, the first model that came out. So they're back to really their roots, which is good to see. So all around, it's a very good phone. But all phones have a couple of weak areas, don't they? So with this one, we have, as I pointed out in this, a lot of bloatware. We get some ads in the ROM. And not everything's running at the 120 Hertz. That's me being very, very picky. It has an excellent screen in this. It doesn't have, sadly, the DC dimming. The Mi 11, the top dog flagship, does, so if you need that, you'll have to get one of those more expensive phones, of course, but it just can't be beat for the price what is on offer here. Now, my recommendation for gamers is to go for this phone if you can. Now, if you're someone that wants much better camera, better video performance, and then I would definitely say, on a budget that is, go for the Redmi Note 10 Pro. That has an excellent main camera. It has the same screen as this, and it still sells for a very good price, but you do get the improved video quality, you get the improved, especially the low light performance is a lot better, I find, because of the 9-in-1 pixel binning, the much larger sensor, 108 megapixels. This camera is good for the daytime stills. The video quality it's all right, and there is some panning, stutter, and jitter coming through. Good to see the 320 kilobits audio bit rate, the electronic image stabilization with the front-facing camera. You really get down to nitpicking kind of things when you find problems with this phone at its price point. Like, why is there no video out? That would have been great to have, but that probably would have added to the price. Why no 4K video with the front-facing camera? Why no 4K 60? That's not there. We've got 1080p 60, and the quality of that, it's reasonably good, not bad there. So all up, it comes recommended from me. Don't just take my word for it. Check out all the other reviews on the internet, and I'm sure everyone will be praising this for good reason, of course. The price, the performance, all that's on offer, all that I've covered in this video. So if you're interested in a very similar phone that I'm currently still working on and reviewing, that is the Redmi K40 Pro. Is it better? Well, I'll answer that question. It's got a faster chipset, Snapdragon 888, but I'll answer all that in the review of that one, of course. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it, subscribe for more up-and-coming videos from me. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, remember, and I will see you in the next one.